Florida State is hosting their most important uncommitted recruit this weekend, and many have asked if it's possible that he commits to the Noles soon. Let's talk about Charles Lester. Last week, Lester visited Colorado, and so many FSU fans absolutely melted down and freaked out because he took pictures with Coach Prime. He posted on his social media about Colorado. He used the phrase, "I'm coming," which obviously is an iteration of the "we coming" that all of Colorado and Coach Prime and their fans use. And people were in obvious meltdown mode because we're Florida State fans, and that's just what we do anytime we have an opportunity to melt down. But he did not end up committing to Coach Prime on that visit. I think that visit was probably Colorado's best and maybe only shot to actually land the talented five-star. And he is now in and on his way to Tallahassee for this weekend. He'll take his official visit. And I think something that's super, super unique about his official visit this weekend is that it's the weekend before the plethora and the huge wave of uncommitted Florida State targets make their way to Tallahassee on the weekend of the 23rd. He's coming in with a very small group, and I think that's intentional. I've spoken with some people inside the program, said that this is just the way that it worked out, but I do believe there is an intention to be able to focus primarily and almost only on Charles Lester, for him to really get that face time and that time with both Coach Norvell, Adam Fuller, Pat Surtain, and the rest of the staff, because I think they're going to turn the pressure up this weekend, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Still coming to Tallahassee this weekend is huge. He's talked about growing up an FSU fan, said he almost committed to the Noles after speaking with Jameis Winston earlier this spring, and I think the Noles are still in pole position here. In fact, he was the one that came out and publicly named FSU his leader earlier in the summer. He's rumored, and a lot of people have speculated, that he may be a silent commit. I don't know that I'm willing to go just that far. We did a video on it. You can check it out after this. But he does seem to really, really like the Noles. And I think the Noles are in a great spot. I'm watching a couple of things this weekend, though, to see how he comes out of the weekend. Will he reaffirm the fact that the Noles are his leader? That will certainly be a question that's asked because he's already said that and put that on record. I think that's big. If he reaffirms the Noles are his leader after taking some official visits, with one scheduled official visit left that's at Georgia next weekend, I think that could be really, really big for FSU. I think that they probably will still lead even after that Georgia OV. I know that they're going to be on him hard, but I still think the Noles would still be in a very, very good spot. If he doesn't affirm Florida State as his leader, if he says he's unsure, I think that could potentially be a red flag. I don't necessarily know that I expect that. I think that if he's asked that, and hopefully he will be as he exits Tallahassee, I believe he will affirm Florida State leads. Here's the big one. Can Florida State put the pressure on this weekend and get him to just commit right after the visit, or maybe even cancel the UGA official visit? I think that would be the major key. If Florida State can put that pressure on, make him feel at home, but not pressure too much into where he feels uncomfortable or awkward, getting him to cancel that official visit to UGA and just pull the trigger now would be huge. Maybe your next best option, maybe your secondary option to that would be to just set an earlier commitment date. Hey, look, you want to take the the OV to UGA, go ahead, Charles. We want you to enjoy the process. We want you to go out and have a good time. But let's move this timeline up. Let's not take this to December. Let's see if we can get this finished up and done here in the month of July, right? He's going to OV with UGA at the end of June. Let's move that timeline up to maybe July 4th, maybe right before your senior season, sometime in that month. I think if that happens, that's another really, really good sign for the Noles. I don't think any one program could do enough this month or month and a half to move themselves in front of Florida State. I think potentially down the road, you could have teams kind of come in and try and encroach there, but I don't think anybody could do it just based on this one official visit that he's taken to different schools. It'd be big if the Noles could get him to move up his timeline, or at least consider moving up his timeline. I hate cliches, but we'll use one. Time kills all deals. And I do think that that's the case. You get Lester to commit before his senior season, I'm pretty confident he's a Nole. As it goes further and further, I still like Florida State's chances a ton. And I've put a prediction in for a certain team that you can check out in our Discord. But the further and further and further down the road you get, the more time you have for potentially something to go wrong. If I'm Florida State, I've got a very, very specific pitch for Charles Lester. If I'm Mike Norvell, I'm telling him one thing this weekend. And I'm going to tell you about that one thing after I give some love to our friends over at Garnet and Gold. Listen, if you're a Florida State fan, you're watching this video, you're super hyped and super tuned into recruiting and what's going on, make sure that you're shopping at garnetandgold.com and nowhere else. Listen, I've wanted certain things that I couldn't find there that were out of stock, and I just didn't buy those things. You don't have to go as gung-ho as I am, but that's how I support Garnet and Gold one way. I shop there or nowhere. GarnetandGold.com, noslaw, NOSLAW. They're the only retailer that gives back not only to our NIL, they give back to our boosters, and they have been Florida State supporters since they opened their doors. Phenomenal company, and you should not be shopping anywhere else. GarnetandGold.com. Use noslaw, NOSLAW, for 15% off at checkout. Okay, if I'm Mike Norvell, I'm telling Charles Lester one thing, and it's the reason we want you to commit is because we want you to be the leader we know you're going to be once you get here on campus. What do I mean by that? Florida State has done a phenomenal job recruiting the offensive side of the ball. They've got studs everywhere, from Croman-Hoke, who's killing it right now out at the Elite 11. Luke's doing a phenomenal job, to Cam Davis, borderline 4 or 5-star running back. They've got several blue chips committed at wide receiver, and then a 5-star tight end. They're really, really close on some elite offensive linemen, and just about every position on the offensive side of the ball, they are crushing. Defensively, not going the same way. You don't have the Croman-Hawks or the Davises yet, and I think that Charles Lester could be that leader. What is Charles Lester going to want when he gets to college? Well, I'd assume that he's going to want to win. Most 5-stars don't go places where they don't think they have an absolute great opportunity to compete and compete for it all. Well, Lester's not going to be able to do that at a super high successful level if the defensive recruiting on that side of the ball doesn't pick up. And now ultimately that lies with Mike Norvell, Adam Fuller, and the position coaches, both of the defensive line, linebacker, and secondary. But ballers want to play with ballers. And I think it would be a huge statement for this class, and you would see this class take off on the defensive side of the ball if Charles Lester committed sooner rather than later. You remember what happened with he who should not be named when he committed a couple of years ago? Our defensive recruiting absolutely took off, and we landed guys solely because he was on that side of the ball. I don't know that it would go that insane if Lester was to commit, but I do know that if I'm on the borderline, if I'm thinking about committing or not committing, and I don't know if Florida State's my school or not, and I have the opportunity to play with one of the best corners in the country, I'm taking advantage of that, and I am committing to a place that Charles Lester is committed. That's my pitch to him if I'm Mike Norvell. I'm telling him not to wait until December. Listen, who knows what that recruiting class looks like without you, Lester, but I know that with you, we're going to do unique and special things recruiting on that side of the ball. Why do you think guys are committing to the offense and trying to beg to get in on that side of the ball? Well, you've got Croman-Hawk and Davis and pretty elite wide receivers, a 5-star in Landon Thomas. I think that people want to play there. I think that's why Florida State has several offensive line targets coming in this upcoming weekend after Lester visits to visit the Noles and see what's going on. I expect some commitments out of some of those as well. And I think Lester could be the linchpin that gets everything started on the defensive side of the ball. I think he could take defensive recruiting efforts to the absolute next level. And if I'm Mike Norvell, I'm telling him, listen, you're going to be a leader for me on campus down the road. I already know that Florida State's your leader. You've said that to me. You've said that publicly. I already know that you maybe have silent committed. Maybe you haven't. But I already know all these things. Why wait? Why wait until later? Get on board now, and let's build this class to be as absolutely nasty and as big and as fierce as we can be. We'll see if the pitch works out. I think Florida State will put a good amount of pressure on Lester, I think they'll do it in a comfortable way. I don't think they'll do it in a weird way like, Mario Cristobal making recruits wear his loafers or Billy Napier trying to get sophomores to reclassify into their class. But I do think that he will put the pressure on Lester to make it official sooner rather than later. Will the Noles be successful? Let's talk about it down in the comments. I'd love to get your take on this. Do you think Lester takes it all the way to December? Do you think there's a chance he pulls the trigger earlier? I think that people got scared last week because he was sending some tweets and seemed like he was enjoying his time in Colorado. I've not been to Boulder. I've not been on an official visit with Deion Sanders. But if he enjoyed his time in Colorado, I can only imagine how much more he's going to enjoy his weekend in Tallahassee. And so hopefully some of that pressure will wear him down and we'll get him in the class again sooner rather than later. We want to talk about it down in the comments. We appreciate you guys for your support. Make sure that you're locked in with the channel. If you missed our last update on Charles Lester and you're wondering what all I'm talking about with all the Colorado this, Colorado that, you can click right here to watch our latest video on him.